morning, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Celtic Minded podcast. I'm Frank and he's Tommy, and it is the morning of the big day when the Champions League draw is made. Later today we'll find out who we're going to play as the Champions League music plays once again around paradise. And Frank and I are going to discuss what type of draw do we want? Do we want just all the big teams coming to Parkhead because they're glamourtised? Or do we want some teams that we think we could actually beat and therefore progress to the next round? One of my pals said, what do you mean a big team and two Diddy teams? I'm not sure there are Diddy teams left because they're all in the Champions League, but we're going to discuss that, Frank. But before we get there, we can't have a Celtic podcast without recognising our start to the season, Frank. 4 games, 4 victories, 12 goals for, 1 goal against, compared to last season, where our opening 3 away games, we lost every one of them. What a start, Frank. What a start.
Well, it's just there's a progression happening at Celtic just now under Ange. He's done an amazing job. And I still think we've got to give him another 2 or 3 years. I think this is only the beginning of what he wants. Now, to build a team, you don't do it in 3 months or 6 months. You do it over a period of 4 years. When you get the whole team together, you get them playing with each other all the time, and everybody knows what each other's doing, then you become a team. Then when you become a team, you've got a good chance of doing things very, very well. And that's why I'm so happy Celtic are now in the Champions League. The Champions League for me is everything. The league's brilliant if you can win it, and the Scottish Cup's brilliant if you can win it, but the Champions League is everything for me. I love the nights where I go back to the house, I'm ready to watch the game and the TV, and have a wee bite to eat, and maybe get a few people up to the house. I love the Champions League nights. They're very, very special to me, and it's very special to Scotland as well, because you're getting all these supporters coming in from Madrid and Milan and Germany.
I'm not sure if we want them in from Madrid and Milan,
Tommy,
but we won't discuss it.
All the hotels are all doing well out there.
But they'll do well if they come in from Frankfurt
I'm only
and
telling
Lisbon.
you, I understand all that, what you're trying to say. But what I'm trying to say, it's good for the economy of Scotland as well.
Well, I'll tell you, I wore, especially the day I had to wear my jersey with the star, just to remind us that we're going into the League of Champions in Europe as one of the former champions of Europe. There's no every club can actually say that. And I also want to say, sometimes when we talk, we just say things because we're so passionate about the game, and sometimes we make mistakes and wee errors.
That happens.
So Tosh McKinley isn't the chief scout at Celtic Park. He's just a scout. He's a good scout and he's a great man. I love Tosh.
I was talking to him.
But he's no chief scout.
I was talking to him, and I always got on well with Tosh, but he said to me that if I say that a player is not good enough, then that's the end of it. And I thought, if he said that to me, that he was a chief scout, and I made a mistake, so I apologise to anybody.
So we apologise to Tosh. He's not the chief scout.
Well,
he's a scout and he does a great job.
It was just, he made that wee sentence to me, and I said, oh, he's chief scout, and I actually...
So you misinterpreted?
Yeah, well,
but
I never...
But by accident?
By accident. I wouldn't try and bring Tosh down or do anything against Tosh, ever. But it was just the way that he said that if I say no to a player...
Tosh forever will be remembered as the guy who crossed for the goal that allowed Tommy Burns to actually win a trophy as the manager. Big Pierre scored with a header against Airdrie, and it was Tosh who put in the beautiful left-footed cross.
Great cross for the ball, Tosh.
Who has impressed you so far? Who's, we've started as a club with a championship winning side from last year. We've added quite a considerable number of new players, as well as obviously getting Jota, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Maeda, all signed in permanent contracts. Who's impressed you most so far? First 4 games.
The 2 players that I like, and I think they should build the team round, is Vickers at the back. I like him. So I love guys at the back are solid, can pass the ball, know what they're doing, are in control of the game, what they're doing, and Celtic need that at the back. Celtic have lost 1 goal this year, so I think Vickers is a big part of that. I think the defence should be built around him now. Well, the defence, I'm saying the defence, but it's only 2 or 3 at the back that defend. You know, they've got this. I'm still trying to work out this system that he's doing. I don't think I might never work it out, but Ange's got it, what he likes to do, and that's all that matters. They've lost 1 goal, so Vickers for me. And the other most important thing for me, being a forward, people think it's just scoring goals. Rubbish. To be a centre forward or a good forward means you make goals, you help the other players, and you score goals as well. So you've got to be playing with these players all the time to know. David Provan was a great crosser of the ball, and he made me a lot of goals. And I knew what he was going to do, and he knew where I was going to go, where I made my runs, and David made me a lot of goals because of that. So that's very important. Jota, for me, scores goals and doesn't score goals, scores brilliant goals. And he's got this thing in his mind, he can pick out a player in the box. Very, very few players can do that. He can do that. He picks the players out in the box and he makes a lot of goals. So Jota, for me, is probably the most important player at Celtic Park right now.
That's a good analysis, Frank. I would endorse what you're saying. I love Big Cameron Carter-Vickers. I'm saying Big Cameron Carter-Vickers. He's not actually very big in height terms. He's less than 6 foot, which is unusual for a centre-back. In fact, some people have suggested that it may be why he just didn't quite make the grade at Spurs in terms of their policy for signing centre-backs. I've been told, Frank, and this may be wrong, but I've been told that he actually played in centre midfield for a while as well. And I wonder, I mean, who knows, but I wonder in certain games, given the conundrum that we now have at the back with Starfelt and the boy Moritz Jens, who I think has come in and absolutely secured his place in the team just now. Plus you've got Stephen Welsh as well pushing for a place. I wonder if some games where we maybe need to have a bit more of a defensive-minded midfield, whether Carter-Vickers couldn't move in there and allow Callum McGregor to move further forward and get on the ball and create things. I just wonder whether we defenders like that, whether it sometimes Ange will go with the 3-5-2 instead of the 4-3-3 that he loves. But he does things his own way, doesn't he? And he's earned the right to do that because he took us at a time of turmoil when we were in a bit of a mess. It was a transitional period. A lot of players who'd done well for us were coming to the end of their tenure at Celtic and maybe weren't given as much as they had given us before. And he's picked that up at the scruff of the neck. He's made some fantastic signings. Players, by the way, that we'd never heard of. And he's turned us into champions. And that's what we are, as the big man said.
But he's not only has he turned Celtic into champions, he's turned Celtic into champions with a lot of flair. The Celtic fans demand that they are entertained. He entertains the Celtic fans. This guy is amazing for what he did. He was the perfect man in planet Earth for the Celtic job. And you know, I gave Celtic a bit of stick, the directors, what they've done in the last few years, but that was some signing.
I think he's been a fantastic signing. There's no doubt about it. He has been the key man at Celtic, and I think our future is in very good hands because he's not just a decent manager. I think he's a decent man as well. He gets the club, he gets the fans, and I think he's managed to bring a whole level of decorum and unity, which was lacking for a couple of years. So from my point of view, he is the main man. I'm looking at his signings and I'm saying to myself, what do we still need perhaps in terms of the depth that's going to be required? We're going to have probably 50, 60 games, Frank, if you think of all the competitions, the League Cup, Scottish Cup, the League, Champions League. We have to have probably 2 teams able to play.
Well, I disagree with you on that, because in 1967, Celtic players were all in the first team and they all played about 64 games each. And in the final against Inter Milan that day, Celtic were the fittest team in planet Earth, so they were. Nobody was fitter than them. At the end of that game, they were still running around. It was a hot day in Lisbon that day, you've got to remember, and the Italians, it was their kind of climate, not a Scottish climate, and they were the fittest team in Europe that day. Now, try and copy what Jock Stein done then, which I think Ange will be doing. He'll know how to keep the players really ready for games. And that time, 64 games all the players played, and they were still flying at the end of that season. That was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in football. So if you train your players right, and I spoke to Jock Stein at one stage, and what he said was he at the end of the season, he didn't do as much training. You know, everything was less and less training and more into the game. And I thought that was extremely clever.
You know, everything's relative, Frank. Everything's relative in life. Everything moves on. I think it's a very, very arguable point that you've made here, and a very good point, because if you think about it, we didn't just create a record in '67 because we were the first team from the UK to win the European Cup, but we've also created a record that's never been matched because we're the first team to win 5 domestic trophies as well, in terms of the European Cup plus the 4 other trophies that we entered. So we entered 5 competitions and won every single one of them, and not another club in the world has been able to do that since 1967.
Were you talking about the Glasgow Cup?
The Glasgow Cup gets included in it, of course it does.
I think you're a wee bit far-fetched with that.
Well, okay,
four teams in
take the League Cup, Scottish Cup and League. There's not another team in England that's won the European Cup and all the 3 domestic trophies. Not another one.
That's amazing.
Liverpool actually had a chance last season of doing that, and they failed, and that shows you how difficult it is. The point is you've made is they were fit enough to do that and win all those competitions. Is it the same nowadays? And I'm going to say to you, I don't think it is, because
Why
I think...
not? Why not?
It's
the same.
I think the fitness levels, and I think the money that is involved in the game means that clubs across Europe are purchasing the best from across the world. We also did something which will never be done again. That's why this star is so important, because of the 20-mile radius that our European Cup winning team was drawn from. That will never be done again, Frank. Never. So when we say we're a unique club, when we say we're record breakers, we mean it. We don't just use. It's no hyperbole. It's not pish. It's actual fact.
Well, I have to say that for the first time in the show, I completely agree.
I
completely agree.
That's a good point. I agree. I like it when you agree with me.
No, that's.
Although I do get worried sometimes.
That's the most wondrous thing about the Lisbon Lions. They all came to a 20-mile radius. I always loved the story. Who was it? There was one of the Celtic players. They used to get the bus into Parkhead, and the bus was waiting. And everybody in the bus was like, "What are you doing, driver? I'm going to go to work." He said, "I'm waiting on Jimmy Johnson." Jimmy Johnson walked along on the bus and they took him into Parkhead.
Brilliant. Oh, those were the days, Frank. So listen, we are in a position where we're yet again top of the league. Top of the league.
They've had a perfect start.
Looking down on the Rangers, and the only explanation we can find is the forum that we've found ever since Ange has been around is going to put us in top of the league. I was singing it on Sunday, I had to get a wee bit in there.
Yeah.
However, we approach a draw that will take place later today, and hopefully we can have a wee bit of analysis. Let's look at pot 1 and let's have a wee competition, right? Real Madrid, Eintracht Frankfurt, Manchester City, AC Milan, Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain, Porto and Ajax. Who do you want?
I want Eintracht Frankfurt. That's who I want.
Right, that's interesting because, well, I'm going to go for either Eintracht Frankfurt, Porto or Ajax.
I wouldn't go for Porto. I think Porto and Benfica are very good just now. So I wouldn't go for any of their clubs. Ajax, I played against them when they were winning the Champions League all the time. We beat them over there, so they can be beat. But for me, Eintracht Frankfurt, for pot one, I would love to get them.
Fingers crossed.
Right.
There's fingers crossed they're going to be throughout this whole process here. So that's pot one. We both of us want Eintracht Frankfurt. Okay?
Well, you want that?
I want that as well.
I
Actually, if you think about it, I did mention Eintracht Frankfurt before we started. I think you've stole that for me.
I forgot about that.
I think you were talking about Real Madrid. You were talking about people coming from Madrid. But they're not in that.
No, I was just talking to you.
Right, okay. Pot two. Liverpool, Chelsea, Barcelona, Juventus, Atletico Madrid, Sevilla, RB Leipzig, Spurs.
Liverpool.
I'm going to say, can I say to you, I actually think the teams in pot two are harder than the teams in pot one. I think the teams in pot two, I don't think there's an easy team or a favourable team in pot two.
I don't think there's an easy team in the whole of the Champions League.
That's a fair point. Yeah, that's a fair point.
We're trying to...
Favourable. I'm going to replace the word easy with the word favourable team.
I'm going to make maybe a shocking statement here, but I think I would want Liverpool. Why?
Because you played with them, that's why.
No. I've played for the second team, but I never played for Liverpool.
But some second team.
Well, the second team, I played in the second
team.
Sammy Lee.
Ronnie Whelan
And Kevin Sheedy was the midfield, and me and David Fairclough up front. And that's why I went there to replace David Johnson. He scored 35 goals that season. He knew he was under pressure. He didn't score goals, he was out. And that's the way to run a club. Have good players in the second team putting pressure on the first team. That's how to run a football club. But anyway, what were we saying there?
You want Liverpool at that pot?
I want Liverpool. Why? Because something's wrong there. The manager said last week, and I was disturbed with it, he said, I'm not really in charge of who comes in.
I never seen that, mate.
Did you know?
Is that what he said?
He said, I'm not really in charge. Something to that effect.
I like Big Klopp as well.
Listen,
I think he's a great big manager.
Brilliant manager.
Great man as well, very good.
A humble
lot
man.
of integrity.
A humble man like Ange. Two of them are humble, and that's why they're great. But there's something wrong at Liverpool, and they played against Manchester United the other day there, and I could see that drop from maybe 100% down to about 85%. I think something's wrong at Liverpool, and this is the time maybe to get a Liverpool that's not as strong as they were in the last 3 or 4 years.
Right, look, I knew our agreement couldn't have lasted the whole show. Because I think you're wrong.
Can I just say something else? It's only 200 miles.
Right, I think you're wrong.
Well, that's up to
I think
Tommy.
Liverpool are going to kick in. I think Liverpool are going to pick up, and I think Liverpool are going to challenge for the Premier League again.
Why do you think
because I think they have got key players injured just now. I think they're Thiago, the fella in the middle of the park, has been injured. I think he's a key player. I think Jota is a very good forward. I think the big fella they bought in the close season to replace Sadio Mane, who's a fantastic player that they've lost. I think he's got sent off, as you know, so he wasn't available for the Manchester United game. So I think they've started slowly, but I think they'll click, and I want to avoid them. I want RB Leipzig.
Yeah, I would have said RB Leipzig if it wasn't for Liverpool. See when you see teams just dropping down a bit, it's so difficult for them to get back up because it's such a time it takes to get you up there, and Klopp has done a brilliant job. He's got them up there, but for me just now, Liverpool, this would be a good time to get Liverpool at Parkhead playing at Liverpool, and it would be a great night as well.
I'm going to disagree, and if we are going to get any of the English teams, give me Chelsea.
Yeah.
Give me Chelsea because they're a good team, but I think we could get in their faces, and I think it would be an England-Scotland battle, and it would be the Greens against the Blues. And I like the battles when it's the Greens against the Blues. So
that's good.
I don't want them. I want RB Leipzig. That's who I want.
Yeah.
Okay, pot 3. Borussia Dortmund, Red Bull Salzburg, Shakhtar Donetsk, Inter Milan, Napoli, Sporting Lisbon, Bayer Leverkusen.
Well, it's easy for me to say Sporting Lisbon and Shakhtar Donetsk, but I would like Borussia Dortmund.
Francis,
why am I saying that?
Francis, why?
Why am I saying
that? Why
are
you saying that?
Like, just imagine you had Liverpool, Borussia Dortmund, and Eintracht Frankfurt. What a group that would be for Celtic. That would help Celtic as well to play against these. You want to be Celtic have got to improve, right? There's no doubt about that. Celtic have got to improve. Now there's no way you're going to improve. You play all the wee daddy teams. Play the good teams. Play the good teams, and you learn more for the games. You know, the next year you've got to reach that level, and that's why I don't want to daddy. I want to go to Parkhead and go and watch.
Dortmund are weaker now, right enough, because they've lost Mick Haaland. Haaland was their best player, and they've lost that, right?
They've lost him, and German football is not as high as it was. I think English football is probably the highest standard in Europe just now. But a lot of the other countries, Real Madrid done well to win the Champions League there, but they won the Champions League because they had a team they've had together for 6 years. So that's why they won the Champions League, because they had a team that all played for each other. And that's very important to me, that you have a football team, and this is what Ange is doing. He's getting everybody playing for each other. Once he gets that team finished, they'll be hard to beat.
So you're going for Borussia, that's who you want?
I think Celtic, Liverpool, Borussia Dortmund, and who was the other one?
Two have went for Eintracht. So I'm going to go for Sporting Lisbon. I want Sporting Lisbon.
Yeah, Sporting
Lisbon.
Right?
I want Sporting Lisbon.
They're good as well.
They're not as good as they once were. I don't think they've started the league very well. They've lost a few players. So my group that gets called out later today, I want Frankfurt.
Yes, don't disagree with that.
I want RB Leipzig.
Don't disagree with that.
And I want Sporting Lisbon.
Don't disagree with that.
You want Frankfurt, Liverpool and Dortmund.
Oh, that would be brilliant. Brilliant. Going to watch Liverpool Celtic game at Parkhead, and the atmosphere, and learning for Liverpool. And Liverpool are on a bit of a downer just now, so the Celtic have got a chance. Now, but can I just say something to you before we go on any more? All these teams that I've said don't want Celtic.
I'm not sure.
Don't. Out of top four, not one of the clubs wants Celtic. Not one of them want to come to Parkhead and try and beat Celtic.
Right, okay.
Because it's been proved many times in the past that you don't get a lot from Parkhead.
Well, not in recent years. It's not been proved. In recent years,
I'm talking
we
about
used to
the history
be
of Celtic.
Fortress Parkhead. We used to be. I'm afraid for the last 5-6 years, we've not been Fortress Parkhead. Yeah. So we need to become Fortress Parkhead again. And you could be right. But I think what's happened here is the debate that's going on among Celtic fans is going on in this podcast right now, Frank, because the truth is, some people want the glamour ties, the Liverpool, the Dortmund, and some people want the realistic chance of progression ties. Sporting Lisbon, RB Leipzig.
Well, I want to go out and see brilliant players coming to Parkhead, Celtic having to do well against them to win their games, and the Celtic standard will go higher because these teams are coming there. They're learning from that. When I played against Ajax and all these super teams in the early 80s, I learned for all their games and I became a better football player because of it.
You missed the game against Real Madrid in 1980, I think it was.
Yeah, I signed 3 days before it. I wasn't allowed to play in the game, and I went over to Madrid to watch the game.
I was at the game at Parkhead.
Yeah, brilliant.
One of the remarkable facts of that game was maybe a player that doesn't come to mind as a Celtic legend or a Celtic great.
Scored a great goal.
Was involved in creating both goals that night. A 2-0 victory at home. Alan Snedden had the shot. Don't know if you remember it. He had a shot inside the box. Goalkeeper saves it, parries it, and George McCluskey puts in the rebound. And then runs down the wing. Fantastic cross to the back post. And who comes in there? Johnny Doyle. Bang! 2-0.
Was that not brilliant?
Absolutely fantastic.
Real Madrid were one of the best teams in the world at the time.
Can I tell you?
And Celtic beat them.
Can I tell you who made his debut that night for Real Madrid?
It was the...
Laurie Cunningham, black player who had moved, I think it was from West Brom to Real Madrid for a record signing.
What a player
he was out doing his warm-up. I can remember as a wee boy out doing his warm-up, and I thought, oh, wow. He was then juggling with the ball. He looked as sharp as a pin, and he was so fast. He never had any influence in that game.
I always remember I was in Buchanan Street one day, and this guy could keep the ball up and everything. I went over to him. I was playing for Celtic at the time, and he was keeping the ball up. He could header the ball, he could shoulder the ball up, and it wouldn't fall to the ground. And he came over, and I met him. He said, "Frank, is there any chance you maybe get me signed for Celtic?" I said, "Can you score any goals?" He said, "No." I said, "I'm sorry, I can't."
Well, I'll tell you what, that was a great night. 2-0. You signed 3 days before?
I signed just on the Monday, I think.
And then you go to Madrid with the squad. A 2-0 lead.
George McCluskey's right through, just has to beat the goalkeeper, and George is a good finisher and missed. And after he missed, there was only one winner.
3-0 they beat us.
They got a goal just before half time. Celtic held, they done well, holding out well, but Celtic at that time weren't a great team away from home in Europe.
Okay.
That's been their Achilles heel in Europe, Celtic.
But in those days, Frank, we weren't worried about who it was we got, were we? Because of the point you make about where we were in world football in those days. Real Madrid, bring them on. Play them at home, beat them 2-0. Unfortunately, away from home, don't take your chances, and therefore you go out of the competition. I could be wrong here, but I actually think it was the quarter-final. I'm pretty sure.
It was the quarter-finals.
It was a quarter-final.
Quarter-final.
Fantastic.
By the way, can I just tell the Celtic supporters, go on and look at the Celtic Juventus game in 1982. We won 1-0 at Parkhead, I think, in the Champions League. And we went over there and we were getting beat 2-0. I scored a perfectly good goal with 5 minutes to go. Wasn't offside, and I watched it last week for the first time since then. I thought, I knew I'd scored that night. I was well onside, and the goal was called offside. That was a disgrace, so it was.
And Celtic went through?
Celtic would have went through into the semi-finals, the Champions League.
1982.
So it's on YouTube. I watched it, and one of my best goals ever I scored. I was onside. I was very good at keeping myself onside for fullbacks and things. I was onside. I scored, and the referee gave it for offside. But that happened a lot with Italian football. You either get your player sent off, or if you scored a goal, even if you were 10 yards onside, it would be offside. That's what I didn't like about Italian football at the time.
Okay, so we're having a go at Italian football.
I'm only telling you what happened. I'm not having a go. I love Italian football. I love when the World Cup was there, but a lot of occasions, and there was one game Celtic went, and I was asked with Daily Record, I think, said, "What do you think will happen tonight?" I said, "Well, Celtic are going to get a man sent off, so they can't win." And what happened? Celtic got a man sent off.
Okay, well look, before we finish, we've had a good wee chat, but before we finish, we probably have different views in some respects. We'll agree in some parts, but we'll have different views in some respects. In that, I'm going to be absolutely honest, hand on heart, and say I didn't want the Rangers to go through to Champions League, right? I mean, I could kid you on and say, oh, aye, it's good for Scottish football, blah, 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 blah. I could do that, and it would not be true. And by the way, I think most Rangers fans think the same when it comes to Celtic.
Yeah.
And whether they do or not, it doesn't matter. It's what I think. If the Rangers hadn't went through last night, Celtic would have had a bigger chunk of the Champions League funding, and that would have been an advantage to us. However, I'm also going to say hand in heart, they deserve to win. They deserve to win.
I thought once, PSV had missed amazing chances in the first half. They take the chances, they won the game. But to be fair to Rangers, they kept going, and I thought they managed the game really well in the second half. Never gave them a chance at the beginning of the second half, and they were waiting for them maybe to make one wee mistake. The guy made a mistake, bump, goal, and Rangers for the rest of the game managed that game extremely well. When you think they lost 2 goals against Hibs and these teams, and PSV are a very good team, made a lot of chances.
Tell you what, Frank, they may be a very good team, but they didn't play well last night.
No, they made a lot of chances last night.
In the first half,
See,
not in the second half.
No, the first half. Oh, yeah.
First half was terrible.
That's what I'm saying. Rangers managed the game extremely well in the second half. What they were doing, wasting time at the end. Well, you've got to do that. That's what you've got to do. And I think that's good for Scottish football. And that brings, I would imagine that all the Celtic people that own pubs and all the fans will be going into their pubs to buy drink. I don't think they'll be complaining.
It's a no bad point.
And it's bringing a lot of money into Glasgow, all the hotels, all the restaurants, everything like that, and it makes Glasgow.
Listen, if I take off my green tinted spectacles for a moment, I've got to reflect on the fact that it's the first time for 15 years that both Celtic and Rangers are in the Champions League, right? And that has got to say something about Scottish football.
That's got to, but Rangers, you've got to look where Rangers were. They were in the 3rd division. They were going nowhere.
You and I are going to have disagreements here.
Nothing happening.
Rangers died in 2012. You're talking about the Rangers, the new club.
Well, I'm talking about the fans. The fans have always been the same. Celtic and Rangers, it's the fans that really run the clubs. They're the people that pay the money. That for me, I can't accept that. What you're saying, as far as I'm concerned, Rangers.
There's about 271 creditors who can't accept it either, because they've not been paid their bills because the old club died and the bills died with them. So
the fans had nothing to do with that. There was mistakes made at Rangers, bad mistakes.
There wasn't any mistakes. There was illegality, Frank.
Right.
Illegality. I mean,
Right.
these guys at the top of Rangers, and I know it wasn't the fans, but these guys at the top of Rangers introduced contract systems that allowed them to dodge taxes and buy players to give an unfair advantage across all the other teams because they refused to stay within the law.
Right, they guys that done that should have been charged, taken to court and put in jail. No, the Rangers fans put in jail for 10 years.
Some of them should be put in jail for their bigotry bile
at
every bloody game.
We're talking about something here. If the Rangers
I
fans...
know, I've got some good mates that are Rangers fans as well. Been
the
brought up with them, and we're good pals, but I hate the bigotry.
But I was brought up in Easter House, and all the Catholics and Protestants in Easter House all played football against each other. There was never any bigotry or anything.
We were always the good-looking teams, but because we were always better looking.
I'm not going to get into all that, Tommy, but I will not disagree with you.
Listen, we are going to wind up the podcast. We've had a good chat. We'll find out later the day who it is we get. And we've not even mentioned the fact that we're going away to Dundee United on Sunday for another away game. I'm confident we're going to win that. I'm confident we're going to have maximum points going into the first Glasgow derby of the season on September the 3rd. And I'm confident we're going to win that one as well. But we'll have another podcast before then.
Yeah,
and we can discuss that.
I think the rest of Scottish football is very poor. Hearts are doing quite well, but the rest of the teams, I think Celtic and Rangers are streets ahead of them, and I think the Old Firm games are going to become very important.
Thanks for tuning in, boys and girls. If you've liked what you've watched and listened to, please share the podcast with your Celtic-minded family and friends. Until the next time, hail, hail.
Hail, hail.